We're news for business people. Hello and welcome. You're watching Countdown on BloombergQuint Live, India's first digital live streaming business news service. These are the top headlines that we're tracking at this hour. It's a volatile day of trade. On expiry day, the Nifty hovers near the 9,700 mark. Banking stocks continue to decline. Dollar strength takes the rupee to a fresh 6-month low. The Indian currency drops to its lowest level since March 14th. Dr. Reddy's is the top gainer on Nifty after its Srikakulam plant gets an EIR from the US FDA. And Lupin is looking to acquire assets in the women healthcare space, says CFO Ramesh Swaminathan in an interview to BloombergQuint. Adds a $1 billion M&A war chest is ready.
That's a day that probably belongs to the pharma, but I would say that it's a day that belongs to the index by and large. Because quite unlike what we've seen the last few days, guys, we really haven't cracked too badly. It's been actually a pretty non-volatile F&O expiry day, if you will. And even the VIX has come off in the session today, as it probably would around expiry day. But it's just not been too volatile today. We don't know if the last half an hour and VWAP-based buying or selling really leads to some specific moves in stocks, and we'll get to that. But the index has been steady state in the session today. Bring up the broader end of the spectrum, bring up the bank Nifty. Yeah, so good going, Ria, for the mid caps and the small caps. The bank Nifty should also come up on your screen, and then just get in the market breadth and just show you what the picture there is. The bank Nifty, 23847. So, okay, again, trading very close to the highest point that it has traded today. And the market breadth will just come up on your screen very, very quickly. It's been an okay day. It's been in favor of the declines for most part of the trading day, but a 2:1 on a day after the kind of carnage that we've had the last 3 or 4 days is not bad. Nifty 50, very quickly on your screen, and a lot of green, or a fair bit of green, you would probably say, compared to what was there in the start, and lots of gainers. I think the key is that the top 4 or 5 names have strong moves to themselves. So the ACCs, DRLs, Ambujas of the world are doing rather well for themselves. The top loser is down about 1.5%. The contributors will show you that it's cement. Well, they're not heavyweights, but they would all be amongst the others pack. Look at HDFC, ITC, Maruti, and Axis Bank. So HDFC is making a bit of a comeback, which is helping the index. Cement is all clubbed within the others pack. And on the flip side, Reliance continues to drag a little bit in the session today. Pradeep, the spectrum.
Well, you'll have more gainers than losers, actually. IRB Infra to start with. In fact, entire road sector is buzzing today. If you look at it, Sadbhav Infra, MEP, JP Infra, all these stocks have been moving up. IRB is up close to 9% now with good volumes. And if you look at some other stocks, Future Lifestyle, well, this one looks more like a bounce back. It corrected roughly 20% or so in 2 weeks' time. And today, when market has started moving up, this stock is up by around 6.5% right now. Also look at Adani Transmission. Now, this is interesting because this one is up 25% month to date. Didn't correct much, but first day of strong bounce in mid-cap. And look at Adani Transmission, what's happening to this one, 9% gain so far. So this is really strong. Motilal Oswal is another such stock, if you look at it, is gaining today with good volumes, and this one also hardly corrected from the highs if you look at it. BF Investments is another small cap that should come up on your screen, up 40% so far this month, and this one has been kind of bucking the trend. On several occasions over the last 4 or 5 days when the broader market was correcting, this one was holding up, and today again it's up by roughly 5%. One more stock that should come on your screen is Bombay Dyeing. Well, this one is looking weak now. 1% is a strong gainer over the last few minutes or so. So this one you should keep an eye on. Yesterday corrected by 4%, and then today, half an hour back, this was down by 2 to 3%, has reversed by roughly 4 to 5% in last 15-20 minutes. Bombay Dyeing continues to fall. It has fallen all 4 days this week. Is in strong corrective mode actually. If you look at it, it hit a 52-week high at 222. So from there, this stock has corrected near about 20% or more so far, Bombay Dyeing.
What about the F&O indicators, Navneet? Very quickly, expiry day today.
Well, Niraj, so far, if you look at the options data, what that is suggesting where the expiry could take place, it looks like it could be in that range of about 96.75 to upside of about 97.60, 10 points here and there. But important to see the 9700 put, which in the first half of the session added almost 30 to 35 lakh shares. There has been some sort of intraday unwinding that we've been seeing. So in the first half, it looked like that the expiry may happen above the 9700 mark, but expect some kind of volatility to come by in the last hour of trade, as there has once again been aggressive call writing which has come back into the system for strikes like 9750 and even the 9800 strikes. So the range remains the same, but the volatility index today has cooled off. India VIX is trading with cuts of almost 3 to 4%, and watch out for the 96.85 mark. Remember, today's low of Nifty has been in that range of about 97.87.5. That's the August low, Niraj, and we've seen a good rebound once Nifty breached that mark. So let's see. So far, it looks like a very small range of about 50 to 60 points now where the expiry could take place.
Let's wait and watch what happens there. But for now, let's get in our experts on board, Sahil Kapoor as well as Ashish Chaturmotha, with their sense of the charts and the derivative positions. Gentlemen, good afternoon. Thanks for joining in. Sahil, to you first. What's the call on the index? Maybe for the next 45, 50 odd minutes, or for the very short term?
So I think today the deciding factor will be whether Nifty makes a high above 976162, because there are about 31-32 lakh shares written at 9750 call, and I think before 3 p.m. or 2:55, if there is an attempt to breach that level, there is a good possibility that Nifty would rally towards 9800. So that remains to be seen right now. I think that should be the trigger. If that does not happen, I think expiry will be between 97 and 9750. It could be anticlimactic, because I think a large part of rollovers have already happened in the morning. We saw yesterday part of the I think arbitrage positions were not rolled, and I think there was selling in cash which took the market lower. If that does not repeat in the last 30 minutes today, I think market could see a surge.
Okay. Ashish, do you think 9700 is kind of a strong bottom and one could buy a call option for the next series, 98, 99, 10,000, whatever you like?
Hi Pradeep. So yes, I think see, at least in a shorter term, we are expecting a good amount of pullback, because if you look at the start of this series, the positions were very, very light, and now any build up of the position, and it is going to be very, very sensitive for the markets. If you look at the put call ratio, it is trading at one level which is extremely, according to me, it's an oversold market, because we have fallen from 1.60 to almost 1 in just 4-5 trading sessions, and the India VIX has cooled off. So all this put together, I think there's a very strong possibility of Nifty crossing 9750 and hitting a level of 9850 at least in next 2-3 trading sessions. So what we have recommended to most of the clients today on expiry is initiating a long call on 9700, which was available at 25-26. Now it is somewhere around 40 to 43. We expect this option to hit a level of 70-75 on an intraday basis, and I think going forward we are recommending a 9800 call option for the October series.
By the way, just want to mark before we get in stock specific ideas, Varun Beverages, the flashes on your screen, they've gotten the rights to sell Pepsi products in Madhya Pradesh and Odisha, and the intraday of the stock will come up on your screen, up about 7%, and a big spike in Varun Beverages in the last few minutes of trade. So good going for this stock in the session today. But let's get in specific stock ideas before we get in our fundamental expert on board. Sahil, to you first, stocks that you're recommending at this hour.
So one is Sanghi Industries. I think it has already seen a big surge today of about 5%. It was trading between 95 to 96, 94 to 96 range for quite a while. I think that has broken today. Volumes are good. You had a strong block deal happening between 94 to 95. I think that's behind us. So that should support the stock at those levels. I expect it to go much higher from current levels. Targets are upwards of 120, 125. So that is a buy. Another one is Asian Granito. The stock has corrected about 20-25 rupees from the peak. We have a long call on this stock with a target of 700 and a stop loss below 400.
All right, Ashish, your trading strategies at this hour would be any stock-specific strategies?
So yeah, so first idea would be on index itself, where I think there's a good possibility of hitting a level of 9850. One can initiate a long, keeping a stop below 9700, and can look for a target of 9850 in next 2-3 trading sessions. As far as stocks are concerned, my first pick would be a long idea on Dabur, where we have witnessed almost 8 to 9% open interest addition in last 2-3 trading sessions. Stock has been consolidating near its all-time high, so I think a very strong possibility of stock hitting a fresh all-time high and hitting a level of around 330, 332. One can initiate a long, keeping a stop below 306 for an upside target of 332. My other idea would be a long on ONGC. Again, a good play on rising crude prices. So I think ONGC, we might see a very strong short covering from current levels. One can initiate a long, keeping a stop below 168, and an upside can look for a target of 182 levels.
All right, so those are a couple of trading strategies coming in the last hour of trade. Well, the rollovers were a couple of stocks which are on the higher side so far are the likes of JSPL, Jubilant Foodworks. You've also got stocks like, CEAT, Adani Ports and JP Associates. These are the 5 stocks where the rollovers so far has been on the higher side. Well, on that note, let's also bring in our next guest. Dilip Bhatt, who's a joint MD at Prabhudas Leeladhar, is joining us on the show right now. Hi, Mr. Bhatt. Good afternoon to you, and thanks very much for joining us today on BloombergQuint. Well, first up, I want to take your view on the entire pharma space.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you. Once again, we've been talking about our stock of the day, and that is Dr. Reddy's for the day. Yesterday, we were talking about Divi's Laboratories. What's the call that you're giving to your clients with regard to pharma counters? There are days when there is some sort of, bottom fishing has been seen in a couple of these pharma counters. Do you think at these levels, these stocks are looking good? Would you recommend buying into any of the pharma stocks?
Well, I think the pharma stocks continue to pose a very fair amount of dilemma. On a risk-return basis, I think the risks are limited. But at the same time, I think the upside doesn't appear to be all that great at the moment, because we are still going to see that in the next couple of quarters, maybe next 3 to 4 quarters, we will see that earnings getting damaged, earnings taking a hit. And I think the US FDA problems, whatever they were, that will really be the cause of earnings taking a hit. But more important is that even some of the fresh observations like what we saw in case of Divi's, I think is not something which is really inspiring a lot of confidence, because the observations continue to be pretty strict and pretty serious as what I would say. So I would say that pharma counters can at best provide you a resilience on the downside, in the sense there is not too much of downside from the current levels, but upside certainly appears to be capped.
Okay. So, Dilip, are you already advising your clients to start putting in money if they have been waiting on the sidelines, or you will wait for the correction?
Well, I think surely what we have been telling now this for a while is that markets as it is were having, the kind of valuations we have seen. They are a little bit of unprecedented, because what we have seen is the economy and the earnings are yet to catch up, and the markets have really raced far ahead of what we really expected. And the other two parameters of corporate earnings and economic growth still lags behind. And that's where we see this kind of volatility. But I think with that situation, which was there for quite some time, and with the kind of domestic flows that we have seen, there are two approaches that we have been telling. Of course, one is stock specific, and second, of course, that you have to space out your investments over, say, next 6 to 8 months without really trying to time the market too much. But yes, this market certainly remains a market to be bought on dips, and certainly for a long-term investment. Short-term really remains a challenge in terms of volatility.
Okay, so if you could share with us some of the stock ideas, since you said it's quite stock specific right now.
Well, I think if I were to take a fair mix, I think something like last L&T and L&T Finance both appears to be pretty good and interesting from the current level. I think both of them merit a look from the current levels, and especially slightly on a longer term basis. They really appear a very good attractive investment propositions. I think apart from that, I would look at something like in the auto space. I would still go for something like Maruti at the moment, which is, this is like playing a little bit safe at the moment, but the going also is very good for them without any doubt. And on an otherwise, somewhere in the mid-cap space, I think something like a Gravitas looks pretty good and interesting for us. I think Jubilant Life Science continues to be pretty interesting for us even from the current levels. And I think some in the infra space, something like RPP Infra also appears to be pretty good and interesting. Then there is ADF Food, that looks pretty interesting in the mid-cap space. And I think in the banking sector, I would still like to go with something like either a Capital First, which once again will qualify in the mid-cap space. I think that looks pretty interesting. This is just a fair a mix of the front and the mid-caps.
Dilip, good afternoon. Niraj here as well, and thanks for joining in. A pocket that has looked pretty healthy today, Dilip,
Always a pleasure.
is cement. Seems to be doing rather okay. Couldn't find too many reasons for it, but for the fact that the stocks were probably sold out a lot, and maybe it's a expiry-led bounce too. What's your sense? Could the monsoon coming to an end and maybe construction activity starting off in the new season lead to a bit of an uptick in the fortunes of some of the cement names?
Well, I think you have also explained it quite well. I think the way it was sold off, the cement stocks, probably they have just caught up, and on a relative basis, there is always some sector which has to do some kind of catching up. Maybe this time is cement or maybe some pharma stocks. But as far as cement is concerned, I think the biggest sore point still is that last year too, the cement growth, if I'm correct, was just hardly 5%. On a smaller base of 5%, we still continue to show a very muted growth even this year. And there is nothing to suggest otherwise. I think the silver lining still appears to be the infra sector. I think this is what we all are expecting now, that in the next 6 months to 9 months, you will see a huge surge of infra orders, because if India really has to grow and provide the employment, I think this is a phenomenal sector which can do both and provide a good multiplier impact in the economy. So I think that acts as a good boost for the cement. But the infra sector, as what we all know, doesn't consume a great percentage of the overall cement consumption. The real estate being the principal driver, and that really is still showing a very muted kind of growth in the real estate. So I'm not too excited about cement sector as such. Maybe there will be a couple of stray names like a Heidelberg would look good, or a JK Cement would look good. But nothing that really appears to be very, you can very confidently take a position. Maybe Ultratech in the front line still appears to be good. But, that's about it. Nothing really very exciting in the cement sector.
Okay, Dilip. Before we let you go, Dilip, understand you're running slightly short of time. But anything in the newly listed space that has caught your eye? Because a bunch of these companies came out with IPOs, some of them trading below their IPO value, some of them substantially higher than what they listed at as well. Anything in the newly listed space?
Niraj, not really. Like some of the things like DMart, of course, is a history, is something which we like and we hold it in our PMS portfolios also. I think that's a stock which we like, despite the fact that we know that it is tremendously overvalued, but then, it's still a longer, a couple of years call that we have taken. But otherwise, I think in the NBFC space, there are a lot of stocks, but I think the valuations are far too away from giving us any kind of comfort at the moment. So basically we are looking at this NBFC space and the finance space. in the newly listed one, which possibly where we are trying to see if there is any value. But otherwise, on an overall basis, you will still like a PNB housing, which still looks good on an overall basis. I think though the valuations are very expensive, but still I think on a growth wise basis that will still continue to look pretty good and interesting. But otherwise we are not focusing so much on them.
Dilip, just last question. I'm squeezing in one more question here. You were talking about the infrastructure space and probably the revival. There was a report by Nomura which mentioned that there could be a revival in the cement space because of demand picking up in the infra and the housing space. Just talking about infra, there's a counter which is buzzing today, IRB Infra, which has risen almost 8% in trade. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I think IRB Infra continues to be on a very solid and firm wicket because of the kind of mix that they have. Some of the annuity projects, some of the BOT projects which are already deep into money. But overall, I think as far as IRB is concerned, I would still not, from the current levels, I don't think I would be too keen to buy this particular stock on a longer term basis. Maybe in the short run, maybe there's still about 10 to 15% steam in this particular stock. But on a longer term basis, I think there would still be some other stocks to look at.
Okay, thanks a lot, Mr. Bhatt, for taking time out for us. And let's now take a look at the Fab 4 stocks of the day. Nikki Mirchandani is here with the stocks that have stood out in trade today. Nikki.
Hi Pradeep, I'm going to start off with what just Navneet pointed out right now, which is the IRB Infra. Now, though Dilip had said that the stock doesn't look good on the long-term basis, but today it is rallied as much as 12% after the shareholders approved the transfer of IRB Pathankot Amritsar Road. It's a 1600 odd crore enterprise value project, and the stock, in fact, all the road infra companies are buzzing today after Jefferies came out with a report where it's positive on the entire space altogether. The second in the list, we have Ashok Leyland. Now, that particular counter rallied as much as 4% that you can see here. Now, Nomura says it has upgraded the stock by terming it as the key beneficiary of MHCV upcycle, which means medium and heavy commercial vehicle upcycle. Third one that we have in our list is Ashiana Housing. Now, this particular counters also rallied as much as 7% after the company entered into a memorandum of understanding between a Pune-based company for developing group housing project. Last in the list, we have Camlin Fine Science. This particular counter rallied as much as 8 and 12%. In fact, the volumes are too high, almost 17.7 times its 30-day average volumes on NSE.
Thanks a lot for that, Nikki. So those are some stocks that one should watch out for. In a moment from now, we'll get in our global guest and we'll go to Mark Matthews. But just before that, I think a couple of stocks that we should try and mark, because we've got these queries on social media as well. So Venkatesh Yadav is asking, what's the next estimation of fall of the market? Venkatesh, I think it's anybody's guess, but if you heard our experts since the morning from a short-term trading perspective, they are recommending a long position, either via options or via futures. So I request you to consult your financial advisor before you take a call there. And Vicky Geria is asking, what about Jet Airways? I personally have a question about IRB as well. So maybe let's split that question. Ashish, to you first. Jet Airways, how does it look on the chart?
So Niraj, if you look at in last couple of trading sessions, stock has fallen from almost 600 odd levels to 475, and still we are not seeing any significant volume activity at these kind of lows. So clearly indicating that there is very lack of buying interest in the stock, which clearly indicates that we might not see the stock stabilizing at current levels. There is some uptick today, but I think on upside 480 to 483 will continue to act as an important resistance point. And keeping that in mind, I think stock might see levels around 460, 455 before forming any base. So I think around 455, 460, ideally there can be some buying interest, but at this point of time, we expect another 3% dip from current levels.
DHFL is one stock, Ashish, if you look at it, 85% odd rollovers, if I'm reading the data correctly. What does it mean? Because this has been buzzing, it moved up quite a bit, but what's the call now?
So I think this stock is forming some base, and if you look at the interest which this stock has seen in last couple of 3-4 months, there's a continuous high rollover in the stock, and still we have not seen any dip in the rollovers. If you look at in terms of price movement, the stock has corrected from almost 620 to 540. But if you look at yesterday's volume, there was a very significant volume, and stock is stabilizing around yesterday's low. So clearly indicating that 520 should act as a very important support, at least in a shorter term, and we might see some recovery towards 565, 570 in next 2-3 trading sessions.
Well, this seems to be traders' favorite stock, Dewan Housing. It came out of the F&O ban yesterday. But let's just quickly pull up NIT Technologies. That stock's trading at day's high right now. It has risen in that range of about 7 to 8%. It's up almost, quoting at those levels of 563. Sahil, on the charts, would you recommend taking any position here for NIT Tech?
So I think the stock is most likely headed towards its 52-week high. Right now it's trading at about 560 and the 52-week high is close to about 602 odd levels. So I think this rally should continue. Currently I think the volume indications on this chart is strong. So I would rather go ahead and hold the stock if I'm long, or otherwise I will try to buy it at a dip closer to 555 levels.
Okay. Stay on, gentlemen. So much more to speak about. But let's get in a very special guest from on the global side. Remember, Indian markets, the longest losing streak as of yesterday. FI outflows, weakening currency, all adding to the worries. Are these temporary in nature, or was this correction the much needed one? And what's the road ahead for the currency as well? Joining us to talk about all of this and more is Mark Matthews, Head of Asian Research at Bank Julius Baer. Mark, thanks so much for taking the time out and joining us. Why is India seeing the kind of outflows that it is seeing the last few days? Is it an EM specific phenomenon, or are India's problems much worse than the other EMs?
Well, if you look at the BRIC stock markets, India is the only one that's at all-time highs. China's 40% below its lows, below its highs of 10 years ago. So is Brazil, so is Russia. So it's natural that you get some people taking profit in a market that's close to an all-time high.
For the last few months, India has been a market which is expensive on valuation parameters, but reliable because of growth catch-up. Do you think that the theory is being challenged now?
I think people who come to India to invest in India tend to be long-term in nature. We have seen some profit-taking now, but the vast majority of the money that goes to India stays there for a long time because it likes the growth profile of the country. You know, over 1 billion people, very young population. None of that's changed, and of course what's come in to be the icing on the cake is the reforms since Prime Minister Modi came into office. So all of those dynamics remain in place in India.
Mark, do you believe that the postponement of growth in India is a factor of temporary disruptions, or could it be more permanent unless some structural changes happen now?
I think it was temporary. I think the imposition of the GST did cause some disruption in trade and commerce, but that will smooth itself out as people get used to the system. And looking forward, I don't see why India cannot continue to grow above 5% per year for the next few years.
Mark, what about rupee? Is there a natural course correction which we are seeing, and can it worsen?
Well, what's happening now is that the dollar, which has had its worst performance since 1985, seems to be finding a floor and rebounding. So the weakness in the rupee has nothing to do with India. It's much more a reflection of the dollar strengthening against other currencies.
And if RBI cuts rates, will that be adverse on the flows front, considering that the tap is off into Indian bonds due to the limit set up by the regulator?
No, I think that if it's in response to low inflation, the market is perfectly happy with the central bank cutting rates, which it is, and doesn't deter from the story.
Well, thanks a lot, Mark, for taking time out for us. So that's Mark Matthews. He's still hopeful, Niraj.
Everybody is, and maybe the market behavior today suggests that as well. But I'll tell you what, guys, we're hitting the last half an hour, and for now, no fun and games. So one would have thought that maybe the VWAP moves would come in maybe into specific stocks, but I'm just looking at the indices on our pillar. Sensex, 1/3 of a percent, Nifty flat, Bank Nifty flat.
Let's just be happy they're in the green right now.
Yeah, we should cheer some green considering we have so much of red the last few days for sure.
Right. But one stock which will be out of Nifty is definitely having a good day, Niraj. I'm talking about ACC. Today is the last day that the stock will be included in that index. It's your biggest gainer on the index. ACC up about 4.5%. Let me quickly get a technical check on that. Ashish, would you recommend taking any fresh longs here?
Not really. We are quite comfortable with Ambuja at this point of time because we have seen a very strong rollovers in last 2 series in Ambuja Cement, and looking into the delivery volumes which has picked up in the stock in last couple of trading sessions, I think this stock has a potential to cross its previous all-time high and can hit somewhere around 310, 320 on upside. So we are expecting 15 to 20% upside in next 2-3 months in Ambuja Cement from current levels.
By the way, look at the intraday of IRB Infra. Let's just get that. It was up 9% just a few minutes ago when we were talking about it. I think it spiked up further if I'm not wrong. Yes, a bit of a spike coming in now, up 12% for IRB Infra. Indo Count has had a fabulous day, about 8.5% higher, so good going there. And amongst others, PNB Housing Finance is bouncing back in the session today. But I don't know, guys, if you haven't taken a chart check on IRB Infra, Sahil, any thoughts here? Is just inching up even further from the levels that it was at, IRB.
Yes, I think the resistance at 230, 240 range is going to act again. This rise, I think, most likely is going to taper off. So one would be, it would be prudent if one could take profits closer to 240 levels. I think today and tomorrow you could ride this. If Nifty and the market itself sees a rebound, there will be some more upside in this stock. But I think 240 is a resistance which most likely will be very, very difficult to cross. So I would rather take profits if I have a long position. If I do not have, I would not venture a new long here.
Right now, do not venture out into IRB Infra with a fresh long. But as we speak, markets are at day's high. Looks like Niraj, the VWAP moves are coming in just that last half an hour of trade. 97.70 on Nifty right now. And Bank Nifty is also seen gains of almost 90. So 23,900 is the range where Nifty Bank is also quoting. And as we were talking, 9,700 was the level which the bulls were trying to protect since the morning, as there was a lot of put writing happening there. So far, 20 lakh shares have been added there. Ashish, at current levels, you were expecting a pullback, right?
Yeah, in fact, we were discussing about this 9700 call, which was around 33, and now it is 68, and we were discussing that 70-80 should be the level which it should hit intraday, and as we were discussing, 98.50 should be the target in next 2-3 trading sessions, and markets are inching towards that. I think it's going to be a good short covering rally, which can take it to 98.50 levels.
To be fair, Sahil Kapoor also mentioned at the start of the interaction that watch out and we may actually touch the 9800 mark as well. Well, we seem to be on our way because it's a really sharp move, Pradeep. 9774 now, up about 40 odd points for the Nifty.
Yeah, so finally action coming in at 3 o'clock. So last half an hour could be more exciting.
Well, Sahil, what are you doing here now? Your initial assessment was that 9750 to 9800. This move, does it take the index all the way to 9800?
It looks like that it can, because there are a lot of rollovers which are still pending, and I think if those kick in, you could see index move towards 9800. But I think Bank Nifty could go and touch 24,000. That could be a trade if you could enter closer to 880, 890. That could be a short-term trade for end of the day today.
Ashish, another interesting stock for the current series, Infi Beam, if you look at it, 88% kind of rolls that I see now. What would be your strategy here?
So broadly, if you ask me, I'll avoid taking a call on this stock because it's very, very volatile, but definitely looking into the technical setup and the kind of position build up in last couple of trading sessions, I think stock has formed a good base around 123 mark, and keeping that in mind, I think one round of uptick is possible, which might take it to 140, 142 levels in next 2-3 trading sessions. And apart from that, I think ONGC and Oil India, these are the two stocks which are showing very strong uptrend, and particularly ONGC, which has seen a very strong volumes today. So I think has a potential to test 180 to 183 on upside.
You know, I'll tell you something. Soumit Sarkar this morning was mentioning this. ONGC doesn't have a single sell call. All analysts have a buy call currently on ONGC. Maybe the worst was factored in when it went down to 155 or whatever it is. And from there, the stock is bouncing up 172 currently. But just look at that. It's had such a bad last 9 odd months that this is probably only reversal to mean or what could be the adjustable mean. But that's really, really interesting for ONGC. And now Ashish Chaturmutta is giving a buy call as well.
So it kept falling in a rising market. It's trying to rise when market is kind of
skittish.
tapering off.
Yeah, that's true. Anyways, but that could be said for the pharma pack as well, right? And in fact, one of India's largest pharma companies, Lupin, spoke to us earlier. Remember, the plan to get the plans are getting that much more bigger. The drug maker is scouting for acquisitions in the women's healthcare space. In a conversation with Menka, Ira, and me earlier, CFO Ramesh Swaminathan added that normalcy will return to the US market only by 2021. Let's listen in.
US has been, in fact, a lackluster performance this year, more because of the fact that we had a pretty large base. As you'd be aware, both Fortimet and Glumetza came under pressure, more Glumetza, and that's the reason why, in fact, the Q1 results were impacted. And we had actually anticipated this and gone public with it quite some time ago. And of course, we do believe that this is perhaps the worst year. Next year onwards, things could be better because we've got a pretty rich pipeline. Next year, for example, we do have a lot of good products to bring into market. But I would think that the normalcy would actually return in 2021.
In 2021.
Yeah,
so are we going to continue to see a drop in your US revenue over the next 2 quarters?
No, I think this is going to be the worst
Are we stabilizing from here or from this second quarter onwards, or will we continue to see cuts in your US business for the next few quarters as well?
No, what I'm saying is this year could be the worst, and after that I think you would see growth next year, but it's certainly not coming back to normalcy. It'll be a couple of years before we get to those levels.
So you're preparing us in the sense for the next few quarters, aren't you?
That's only for the US, but we've got a lot of other growth engines also. It is about 45% of our business, and you would recognize that you've got a pretty rich pipeline coming in for that. And of course, if we talk about the medium term, you've got a very rich pipeline with the respiratory portfolio, complex injectables, and a host of other things, and of course, derma products and the like, and biosimilars also.
Can we pin you down to some more specifics when you say inorganic strategy? What kind of size of businesses in this space, in complex or specialty generics, would you be interested in? Where would you see some sort of value addition to your efforts? What kind of outlay are you looking at for M&A?
So we have always professed our interest in women's health as well as the pediatric space. That's because we've got a franchise which has been around for some time. We already have a couple of products in both categories. Suprax, of course, was our anchor product in the pediatric space some time ago. It's come down substantially. But having said that, we are looking around for assets in the women's health space, and there are quite a few there in the market. Having said that, the sweet spot for us would be between $150 to $250 million per tranche, and we could do multiple tranches of this.
Per tranche? Explain that to me. Sorry.
So potentially one molecule, we could.
Okay, so you'd be buying products, not the companies themselves.
It could be companies. It could be it could be a product. It could be.
So how much have you put aside, let's say, for M&A? Or how much have you earmarked?
If you look at our balance sheet, I think we've got capacity to borrow about $1 billion more. But that's
So you started with $150 to $200 million, and you just told us that you have the ability to leverage $1 billion.
We could certainly do that, but having said that, it's not as I'm going to expend that entire amount in one tranche. It's going to be, as I said, across multiple tranches and over time.
So you'd be comfortable to spend about $1 billion on an inorganic strategy to be able to build out the complex and specialty side of the business.
For sure.
That's
having
a fair
said
way.
that, there is also continuous accruals. A lot of the pipeline is still rich, so I think the cash flows are pretty steady.
All right, that's the management of Lupin. But let's move ahead and talk about Varun Beverages, the stock which is in focus today. In fact, the stock's been trading with good amount of gains now, actually off day's high after that news came about. That company has won rights to sell PepsiCo products in states like Madhya Pradesh as well as Odisha. Let's get a better perspective on that news. Joining us now on the show and on the phone line, it's the CFO of the company, Mr. Raj Gandhi is here. Mr. Gandhi, good afternoon and congratulations on the news. Could you take our viewers through what exactly does this mean for the company? What kind of revenue contribution can we expect from both these states, and by when exactly will the numbers start reflecting in your financials?
Sure. In fact, this is in line with our earlier declaration at the time of our investors call, when we announced the intention of acquiring these two territories. This has been concluded yesterday and day before. In the last 2 days, we have completed the DD and paid for these two territories and merged through the business transfer into Varun Beverages. So technically from today, the business that's being done by these companies will accrue to Varun Beverages. And this should contribute about 150 crore top line to the company.
Mr. Gandhi, as we understand, in MP and Orissa, PepsiCo products are already available. So what is it? The agency shifts, or it shifts from some other bottler to you? What exactly has happened?
It's like this. Under a franchise agreement, now we are licensed to produce and sell the product within these 2 states. Like in other 5 territories where we have our bottling facilities, we produce and sell there under the brand name of PepsiCo. And these were so far being run by another Pepsi bottler, and now on will be a part of Varun Beverages.
Do you see such opportunities in more territories going forward?
Well, we have been looking for such opportunities for the last 25 years since we joined hands with PepsiCo, and now and then whenever we get a good deal, we always look forward for the same.
All right, Mr. Gandhi, thanks very much for joining us today and taking us through the details as to what that means for the company winning states like Madhya Pradesh and Odisha, where they will be selling PepsiCo products. But in the meanwhile, markets are still trading firmly in the green. 97.66 for Nifty, up about 30 points. Nifty Bank also, actually Nifty Bank is trading at day's high, inching once again very closer to the 24,000 mark. It's up about 145 points. Ashish, would you recommend taking any trade on Bank Nifty at these levels? It's at day's high.
Yeah, so I think we recommended a level of 24,100 on upside, but looking into this trend now, I think one can revise the stop loss to maybe 23,780, and upside can revise the target from 24,100 to 21,350, and I think that should hit in next 2 to 3 trading sessions, and any dip towards 23,800 would be an opportunity to again average the long positions.
By the way, RB Infra has cooled off, so from a high of about 12%, this one has come off quite rapidly, down to about a 7% gain from the 12% gain. So quite a sharp pullback that has come into IRB Infra. Want to pull up the intraday of JSW Energy. That is looking like an interesting stock in the session. Look at that spike and starting to move up a little bit in the last few minutes of trade. And I think from amongst other names, Sun Pharma Advanced Research and Container Corp, some interesting mid-sized names that are moving around on the Nifty 200 in the session today. Sahil, while we keep on talking about these mid-sized names, what about a couple of these large index names? Bharti Infratel, that's chalked a fairly different course compared to some of the other telcos, and strictly speaking, it's not a telco in the strictest of senses. Is this looking very different from the other telecom related companies, or?
So I think overall if you look at the chart for Infratel, largely I would suggest that there is a good possibility that it will go and breach the 415, 420 barrier, and I think it is entirely not very similar to Bharti or an Idea, for that matter, in terms of how the price patterns are panning out. So I would rather trade Infratel here constructively, look to possibly buy dips towards 380, 385. I think that should be the strategy, and stop loss should be below 370. The trend appears to be heading towards 420 levels.
Okay. Let's also look at what's the small cap stock of the day today, and Jayesh Khilani is joining us with that key mover in the session. Jayesh, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Niraj. So the small cap stock of the day is Ruchi Soya. Now this is on the back of them signing an exclusive deal with Patanjali for manufacturing, selling and distributing all of the Patanjali edible oils. Now the stock was up last time I checked more than 10% in trade. But if you remove today's move, Niraj, the stock has practically done nothing over the past 1 year. Now their distribution network is something that Patanjali is trying to leverage on because they have outlets in over 10 lakh outlets which are spread across more than 4,000 towns, and oils as a contributor to Ruchi Soya is very important because it constitutes more than 70% of the total revenue that Ruchi Soya gets. So definitely positive news coming in for Ruchi Soya.
Okay, so Ruchi Soya is the interesting stock of the day. We'll thank Jayesh for that one. Niraj, by the way, I remember a couple of months back, this news had come and the stock had given a similar move.
I'm trying to think how many times I have heard this news.
Yeah.
First they were talking about a deal.
Correct.
Then they were very close to a deal. Now finally they have entered the deal, and whenever they have done this, the stock is at a move.
Stock moves at 15%.
I think we need to wait when the actual numbers start flowing in their P&L account on account
that'll
of
be
this
interesting
deal.
too, yeah.
Exactly. If the move on the news is almost 10 to 11%, maybe they're expecting good growth numbers coming from Patanjali Taya. We'll have to wait and watch for that.
You know, Ruchi Soya used to be, a high price stock at some point. I don't know if there's a bonus or a stock split or something like that, or maybe it's just been a stock that has gotten battered down. But I remember seeing ticks of close to 100, 115 on this one. Confess ignorance about anything else about the business, quite honestly. But it used to be an interesting stock. I don't know, 2024, it gives these spikes and then just cools off very, very rapidly. But otherwise, confess ignorance.
It has now fallen into that category of 20 to 30 or say kind of penny stocks, low price stocks, where not many analysts really see any value, so to say.
Let's wait to call it a penny stock, Pradeep. It's still 24.
Yeah, nevertheless. But I tell you what, Ruchi Soya may or may not have gains, but what we do best is try and get you the best advice from dealing rooms across 3:15. So that time of the show when we turn our attention to what dealing rooms are saying. Dealers say, Darshan Mehta is here with his channel checks. Darshan, good afternoon. What are you learning from your sources?
Good afternoon, Niraj. One of the stocks that dealers are talking about is BEML. The stake sale buzz is gathering a lot of momentum. The government has been very open and candid in saying that, BML, they want to sell stake in BML. There are several suitors that dealing rooms are talking about. But again, it's down in trade today, but the stake sale murmurs are again there back on the dealing room. The other one that we are talking about is Ultratech Cement, which is doing well in trade today. It's up almost 1.8%. Some of the foreign funds are rather active in this counter. So Ultratech is something that we're watching out for. And two companies, PTC India and 63 Moons. Now 63 Moons is the erstwhile Financial Technologies. Now Indian Energy Exchange has given a formal notification that over the next few days, we've got the invite that the company wants to list, and over the next few days, the entire process of listing and road shows and price, everything will come in. So these two counters own stake in IEC, and because of that, these two counters are being spoken about today. PTC and Financial Technologies or 63 Moons.
Thanks, Darshan, for getting us all the stocks where there is a buzz in the dealing room. But let's quickly pull up the chart of Hindustan Oil Exploration Company. That's seen not a sudden rise. Actually, the stock's been trading in the positive territory, but I guess right now it's almost at day's high with gains of almost 8 to 9%. Ashish, on the charts, how does it look?
Looks very interesting because if you look at, this is not today. This stock has been in action for last couple of weeks when it crossed first time above the 75-76 mark, and that time we saw very significant volume activity in the stock. It moved till almost 100 levels and again saw a correction. I think now it has formed a good base around this 85-86 levels. Keeping that in mind, I think this stock has a potential to cross its previous high, which is around 100 levels, and can hit somewhere around 115-120 levels. So I think easily 20-25% upside could be seen from current levels, and for that I think one should keep a stop below 85 levels.
So Pradeep, Navneet, about 14th of September or thereabouts, I think sometime this month, HOEC had spoken to us and talked about this anticipated growth in gas volume mining over the next few quarters as well. And I think they gave some very, very positive commentary. Amongst other things, they mentioned that their operational numbers could really go up much higher than what the current month numbers were. I wish Somit was here because Somit did that interaction with HOEC. But I distinctly remember that HOEC's commentary was very, very positive. In fact, if viewers log on to BloombergQuint.com and try and search HOEC, then you will get a sense of what I'm trying to say. Their commentary about HOEC of the management was very, very good. Even a Google search would throw up that interaction, I think, that HOEC had with BloombergQuint on the 13th of September. Margin expansion up to 75% in FY19.
I think the reason for that was their gas production started from their Assam field. I think that was a major trigger post which we interacted. I remember even I did one of the interactions with them, for which they've actually got all the clearances, and they also said that the commencement of new gas field will reflect in their financials from the next financial year.
Okay.
So probably in anticipation of that, plus the production is already started. Maybe that could be one of the reasons. But as you rightly said, I remember Somit too had an interaction where they actually said that the revenue sharing from Assam field, where there's a JV between HOEC, Oil India and IOC, they expect almost 100 crore annually to come from that Assam field, which I feel is a good number for a company like HOEC.
And there's a gas price revision scheduled over the weekend as well.
Yeah, and I think in any case, the gas prices in India move in tandem with the international oil prices. So with oil moving to 60, the gas price will also be revised up.
Yeah, I think the Bloomberg survey that was done pointed towards the gas price hike being very, very imminent over the course of this long weekend. And maybe that could be the reason, one key reason as well, why ONGC, why some of the other stocks could be active in the session today as well. So that would be interesting, and we should talk about that with our next fundamental guest as well. Rajesh Kothari of Alpha Accurate would be joining us. In fact, okay, he does join us. Rajesh, thanks so much for joining in.
Thanks.
It's a special week for us as BloombergQuint as we launch. Thanks for taking the time out and being with us. What's your view on oil and gas, and particularly the gas-based companies? There is a survey, Bloomberg survey, which says that the hike could be imminent. We've seen the last few days the gas-based stocks being fairly active. Any thoughts on this?
So congratulations first of all on your launch.
Thank you so much.
I think on the gas utilities, the LNG side of it, you are going to see overall downward pressure, and therefore it is good for India as a country, and of course for the companies which are operating in that regime. As far as the the distribution side of that, like companies like GEIL and so on and so forth, of course there are a lot of I would say expectations of the revision in tariffs and so on and so forth. So there are two different structures which will materially are completely different when you compare one company versus other. So depending upon which business we are talking about is going to be there.
Okay. Rajesh, hold on to that thought. We'll just talk about other details in a minute as well. Maybe you should catch your breath too. Thanks so much for running into the studios. But it's 3:20, that time of the show, wherein we get in the top trading ideas from our experts. Sahil, to you first. One top BTST or STBT as the case may be.
I think only one day stock, it should be ICICI Bank. I think big sell-off because of non-rollovers. I think post the expiry, you could see a big surge of 2-3% in next 1 or 2 sessions. So buy on ICICI Bank.
A buy call on ICICI Bank from Sahil Kapoor for tomorrow or maybe the next couple of days. Ashish, your top call, your top closing strategy.
Yeah, so apart from Dabur, which looks very good, I think one stock which is catching the eye is IGL, where we have seen a very good build-up. Keep a stop below 1435 and upside look for a target of 1520, 1530 on upside.
Let's pull up the chart of Siemens. Remember, the stock was down yesterday as well, and there were a huge amount of short positions which were seen for the October series. The stock currently trades at day's low. It's fallen almost close to 3% right now, quoting at levels of about 1185. Sahil, would you recommend taking any fresh short positions at these levels, or traders who would have shorted the stock, would you recommend booking their profits right now?
I think it's time to move out of shorts on this stock at about 1185 or so. That is the current price. I think anything below 1200 you should take profits and go away from Siemens. I think there could be a significant bounce back. The stock is, I think, one of the most oversold in 2017 in a shorter time frame. So it is better to book profits if you're already short.
Rajesh, one stock we were discussing, in fact, Darshan talked about it before you just came in, is BEML. What is interesting about it, when I speak to the fund managers and PMS guys like you, they also refer to this one. And even, the regular traders like Ashish would also look into it. It's also a high beta trading favorite stock. What's your view on that?
Well, we are holding for our PMS clients, so kindly put a disclosure for the same first. We are overall positive on the company, considering that huge, there were 3 segments, as you might be aware. You have railways, you have defense, and you have earth mining equipment related business. And all 3 business, they were not doing so well last 3 years. They are now at an inflection point. So if you look at their order book, if you look at their segment wise results, you are going to see the improvement in the fundamentals of each of this segment. And probably that will also result into improvement in margins, but not in the immediate 1 or 2 quarters, maybe after probably 3 to 4 quarters. So overall, we are positive in the name. Of course, the valuation is very important thing. Stock has already done quite a bit. If you look at it from last 6-9 months. So that's in nutshell our views.
What about the textile space, Rajesh? I mean, we can talk about pharma and IT and other spaces regarding the rupee and the exports. But I think what this currency move maybe has done in the last few days, I don't know if that's the reason really, but all the textile names are starting to move up. Is there any stock that you guys have a preference for, or do you guys have a view on within this textile space? There are some large players and some really small players as well. So I don't know which space you look at.
See, if you look at the entire value chain of textile, there are two kinds of players. One which are fully backward integrated players, another which are focusing on the value chain of the side. For example, 2.5-3 years back, we used to have Indocount, which we bought when market cap was probably less than 300 crores. Stock price was probably less than 200 rupees, pre-split, pre-bonus. And of course, then we got out of it when it became 10-11 times price to earning with a, of course, very superior ROE in ROC. But then earnings were those who got impacted because of this currency issue and many other company-specific issues. So I think what is important to look forward is that how the cotton price is going to behave and how the currency is going to behave. These two things are most important. And then on top of it, you look at, of course, the overall demand growth of the business in which company is operating into. And if you think it can deliver 18-20% earnings growth, which many companies in that space, when I say that space means bed linen, kind of a bed sheet kind of a player, because there are 3 large players operating in that segment. I think then probably you can have a, probably a better future for next 2 years. So probably from third quarter onwards, you might see, better results. So it is still kind of wait and watch for us. We are watching it very closely, but it is an interesting space.
Gentlemen, as we speak, Bank Nifty has crossed the 24,000 mark once again. It is trading at 24,066, and the majority of the gains today have come in from the private banking space, as the Nifty Private Index has seen good gains of almost 1%. Rajesh, Bajaj Finance enters Nifty tomorrow, and from tomorrow, Nifty is going to have 50 stocks as Tata Motors DVR also comes out. I know we've been talking a lot about a stock like Bajaj Finance, which has done very well, good returns for the shareholders. At these levels, would you be comfortable buying into it?
Very important question. We are happy shareholders of Bajaj Finance for all our PMS clients. So again, please kindly put disclosure, disclaimer for the same. And we remain overall positive on that name. I think there is a structural growth story, and most importantly, it is a very stringent risk management, very low NPL levels, despite probably you would have seen the demonetization as a cycle, which was probably kind of an acid test in last 1.5-2 years, where growth was really very high. But I think they have delivered and they continue to perform. And the growth is going to be, very, very strong, robust growth. So that should lead to, hence we continue to remain positive on that name. So we hold that company.
Okay. Rajesh, one final question. Anything in the retail space that you like? Because that pocket is very, very active. I would classify Shankara Building also as a company of that sort, but Shoppers Stop, D-Mart is anybody's dream. Anything that you like within this pocket?
Yeah, we are holding few of these names.
You are holding few of these names. Okay.
Yeah, if you as you probably know, we are holding Shankara for our PMS client. We are holding one of the future fashion future life in our portfolio, and I think this theme is interesting. And again, if you look at each business, if you can deliver 20% kind of SSG growth or 30% kind of a revenue growth, which both of these companies are delivering, probably the valuation, although look a little bit stretched, at right valuations, again it becomes a attractive stocks to buy.
True. Okay. Stay on, Jaman. Lots more to talk about. 3 minutes to close. Let's take it across to Pradeep for starting to wrap up the trade.
So, well, we have recovered from the lows. If you look at it, yesterday we closed 200 points or 180 points lower from the day's high. Today we are closing 70 points higher from the day's low. So that looks good. On Sensex, almost a century, 94.95. Nifty Bank has also recovered quite a bit and above 24,000, 2460. That's really interesting. So smart gains for Nifty Bank as well. And if you look at the mid cap and small cap space, there also we have seen quite a lot of activity. Small cap is up by around 1%, and so is mid cap. So across the board buying, one could say, and from lower levels we have seen interesting moves today. Let's look at what has happened to some of the Nifty constituents. And well, today when market has been moving up, let's look at some of the stocks that kind of tried to pull it down. Asian Paints, RIL, Bharati, Tata Motors. Well, but that was not enough, because we see majority moving in positive direction, and leadership came from Kotak Mahindra Bank, HDFC Bank, HDFC, SBI. So some of the banking stocks with relatively higher weightage in Bank Nifty and Nifty both played a key role in pulling the index up, and also joined by Cipla and Dr. Reddy. So Pharma was today on the positive side as well, Niraj.
Yeah, all of these stocks doing well. I just have a handful of names, 3 or 4 names before Navneet sums up the rest of the pack. But there was brisk activity within the banking pocket, within the cement pocket, and a few others. So let's bring up some names out in the open. A couple of stocks which did reasonably well for themselves, including the Sanghi Cement, which is trading at fresh highs for itself. So 99 or 100 or thereabouts. Good going. In addition to ACC and Ambuja, I think Sanghi moved up very, very smartly in the session today. So good going. They were oversold maybe as well. So I think a bit of a bounce coming in for the cement names. So let's move on and get in a couple of other movers as well, which showed some good strength today. Bajaj Finance into the index tomorrow, as Navneet was saying as well. A large cap stock, but another 2% added for this one. 1838. What is out will be ACC, of course. That's a separate thing. But that too had a robust move in the session today, as Pradeep highlighted, about 3.5% in the session today for ACC as well. And last but not the least, just a couple of pockets which moved up. Aside of textiles and a few others, were stocks which had not fallen too much and bouncing back. So Pradeep was mentioning Motilal Oswal and a few others, but I think Adani Transmission stood out 8% higher in the session today at 146 on very high volumes. This one is packing a reasonable punch today. Navneet?
Well, Niraj, let's be happy that index is closing not above the 9,700 mark, but also above the 9,750 mark today. Well, it did breach that mark in the intraday session, but once again, there was a rebound from those levels. So let's look at Nifty contributors. First, HDFC Bank, your heavyweight. Remember, this was a stock which was actually underperforming in the past few sessions. So today, it contributed 10 points. Majority of the gains are coming from financial and banking stocks. Kotak Mahindra Bank, HDFC, all these were your top contributors on Nifty today. So what dragged the index lower was Reliance Industries, dragging it by 6 points. Asian Paints, TCS, Bharti Airtel were a couple of other counters which dragged Nifty lower today. In terms of volatility, we were seeing India VIX, which was inching higher in the last 3 to 4 trading session. In fact, yesterday it touched the mark of 14, but it cooled off on the expiry day. India VIX finally closing at levels of about 13.11. Couple of pockets which were doing well. One of your top sectoral gainers was Nifty Realty Index, so that was also up, but IRB Infra, it's not a part of Nifty Realty, but that saw good moves coming about. It ended the day in the green, but the stock is actually off day's high. At one point of time, it was up almost 10 to 11%. Besides that, 2 counters which stood out, and they were also out of the F&O ban. Counters like IndoCount and Reliance Capital saw good moves after coming out of the F&O ban. So IndoCount up almost 7%, Reliance Capital up almost 3%. Lastly, we discussed HOAC in the show, a stock which has been consistently doing well. Today, it ended the day with gains of almost 10 points. Remember this gas price revision which is due.
Well, so these are some of the stocks to watch out for in next series as well, maybe. But Ashish, one last comment on the expiry. If you look at it, I think this is the first meaningful correction we saw in this current series after, 7 or 8, rather 9 positive series, right? What does it mean, for the next series if you look at it?
So I think it's good because if you look at the positions are quite lighter this time. We are not seeing a very significant long build up nor short build up. So it's more of a market which will wait for fresh positions to take a Q and direction. Technically speaking, if you look at the move from 9,400 to almost 10,150, 9,700 is a 61.8% retracement, which is again a very, very important support level and will be a trend deciding factor as well. If you look at, as we were discussing about put call ratio, it's at comfortable zone of 1. So again, not an extremely overbought or oversold zone. VIX has seen a jump of 35-40% and now cooling off again, will give some signs of comfort. So I think broadly this next week maybe market might remain in a range between 9,700 to 9,850. But once we see a decisive move beyond 9,850, that will be a key trend deciding factor which can take Nifty towards maybe 10,000, 10,150 levels back.
Okay.
So the range, Ashish, actually we've been talking about for October is 97 to 10,000. Do you think there can be a major pullback and we can actually once again try crossing all-time high of 10,000?
Looks like so, because if you look at the index, constituents, a lot of the stocks have seen a good amount of rollover. Now, if you look at the stock like Bajaj Auto, has seen a very strong delivery position build up. Stock has managed to not to break 3,000 levels, clearly indicating that we may see 10 to 15% upside in days to come in stock like Bajaj Auto. We are seeing a lot of buying interest in the FMCG names like Dabur, Nestle, Hindustan Lever.
Sure.
So I think there we will see a lot of buying interest. And auto space, again Maruti I think has seen a decent correction, might see signs of stability. So overall I think there exists a very strong possibility of Nifty inching towards 10,000 mark.
Okay, time for one last question, Pradeep, to Rajesh, if at all.
And finally, that would be, Rajesh, if you see, Nifty has corrected just 4%. If you look at some stocks which have corrected 10, 15, 20%, which are the stocks or segments you are looking to add to your portfolio on this correction?
I think there are two baskets. One is the global basket and second is the local basket. So for example, there are few companies which are impacted significantly because of the currency appreciation in last 3 quarters. They might benefit as the currency get depreciated. So maybe a few large auto ancillary companies which are export focused, they may get benefit. Chemical companies which are export focused, they may benefit. So one is that kind of basket. Other is of course the private sector banking, consumer finance, NBFCs, the consumer related. When I say consumer means not only FMCG but also the consumer durable, tiles, plywood, beneficiary of GST in the longer term and so on and so forth. So these are the space I would say. Which
you don't think this space is overdone?
Not at all. Not at all, because this space is going to continue to deliver 18 to 20% earnings growth. And therefore, while the valuation may look a little bit stretched compared to last 3 years average price to earning multiples, they are still reasonable.
Okay, standard question, any disclosures, Rajesh?
All the companies what you have discussed, we are holding for probably for most of them for PMS clients. So please put disclosure for this.
Okay, so disclosures from Rajesh, very quickly disclosure.
Few of the stocks might have been discussed, been recommended to our clients. I do not have any personal holding in any of them.
Okay, Sahil, I'll request you to stay on for what did you miss as well, but thank you so much, gentlemen, both of you, for coming to our studios and talking to us today. We'll take a very quick break. Back after a break with what did you miss?
Are we live?
Welcome to programming that's insightful, authoritative, and at your fingertips.
Bringing news alive. So immersive, so new, and so addictive. You will want it no other way.
The Bloomberg Terminal, accessed only by over 325,000 marquee investors across the world until now.
Just business news, we're news for business people.
Hello and welcome to What Did You Miss? Let's first take a look at the top headlines at this hour. Indian market snaps 7-day losing streak. Sensex gains more than 100 points. Nifty reclaims the 7,950 mark. The BSE Midcap Index outperforms the Sensex, gaining more than 0.5%. Cement stocks are the biggest gainers in trade today after brokerages say pricing and volumes will improve here on. FY 2018 is going to be the toughest year for Lupin in the US, admits the pharma giant CFO Ramesh Swaminathan in an interview to BloombergQuint.
Well, it promises to be, it's turned out to be a great day of trade. We'll get Navneet Saluja and Sahil Kapoor to talk a lot about what's happened in the derivative space, especially on the expiry day today. Let me just quickly sum up what's happened on the index though. About about 1/3% or thereabouts for the Nifty, but strong move from the lows of the day, more so for the bank Nifty, which did very well. And if you look at the broader end of the spectrum, the mid caps and the small cap index, the BSE small cap, the Nifty small 100, I think about 1% kind of a rally is nothing to scoff at. All the last few days, we've had a terrible time. In today's session, while the global markets are lying flat, we've had a really, really good day of trade. What's worked today on the index? I think one, cement did reasonably well. They're not the top contributors, but ACC Ambuja had their day under the sun, so good going for those two. But if you look at the Nifty contributors, you will get a complete sense of what really worked. Certain financial names, certain oil and gas names participated. So HDFC and HDFC Bank, which have been on the flip side for the last few sessions, have today participated on the other side. So good going there. Kotak Bank about 8 points, ITC about 6.5, and oil and gas did participate, especially the upstream names. So ONGC, for example, had a fairly decent session. Reliance, unfortunately, could not and ended up as amongst the top contributors, but otherwise, it wasn't. It was probably a case of there not being too many heavyweight losers, which led to the index doing what it is doing. So all-round participation from the gainers, HDFC Twins turning around, and when you have heavyweights contributing about 20 odd points by a mere 1.5% move, you know that they could probably stabilize the day, Pradeep. So not a bad day for the large caps at least.
Yeah, and even for the mid cap and small cap, if you look at the market breadth remained strong through the day. We saw decent volumes, and even towards the end, if you see, quite a lot of counters were buzzing. Like you look at Hitachi Homes, that moved roughly 6-7 odd% in last half an hour of trade. You look at some smaller stocks like KSB Pump that moved up quite a bit with good volume in last minute of trade. You also had Thomas Cook that saw decent buying, 3.5-4% movement. You saw JSW Energy. So these are some of the stocks which kind of tell you that people really decided to buy and carry their long position towards the end in some of these cash counters, which are not really the FNO counters. So while the focus was on expiry, on rollovers, we saw decent buying and a number of cash counters as well, which kind of indicates that people are in a mood to buy now when market has corrected 4% or so.
Well, that's right. I remember September 19th was the day when we touched new highs for our markets of 10,178. And from there, it's just been a selling pressure in just last 7 trading sessions. In fact, Nifty's given up those gains, almost down nearly 400 to 420 points. But an expiry, which everybody was dreading this time around, I guess it's not been that bad, because look at Nifty. It's just down about 1.3%. Well, yes, it has been one of the worst expiries that one has seen for Nifty in 2017 at least. I remember November expiry, which was due to demo on Nifty, fell almost 7.5%, but not bad. In fact, I remember in the August series, Bank Nifty was down about 2 to 2.5%, but this time around, a good recovery was seen for Bank Nifty. In fact, that's down only 1.3% for the series. And what's important is it did once again cross the 24,000 mark. And if that's the closing we're looking at, then that's the support which everybody was talking about. What's in store for the October series then? If you look at the options data, it is suggesting that the range for the October series could be about 9,700 on the downside to about 10,000 on the upside. But what is more important going ahead, the kind of pullback that one saw in the last half an hour of trade, remember, it was the expiry day. You see those VWAP moves also coming about in the markets. Let's not forget there are a lot of shorts in the market, which is not bad actually. So we could see more of short covering bounce coming back. But let's see the sentiment, which had turned negative in the last few trading sessions, that still remains to be seen whether FIs continue to sell or not.
Yeah, I think if I'm laying my 100 rupees on the line today, I would lay it on FIs having sold today as well. I don't think that scene is changing. Yeah. So Pradeep, are you betting
Trend
otherwise?
is your friend.
Are you betting otherwise?
So is mine. No,
you aren't.
Not at all.
Okay. Fair call. Let's ask if Sahil is doing that or no. But Sahil got his call right on the index for sure today. If you were on BloombergQuint and if you heard Sahil Kapoor at 2:30 p.m., you would have made some money. Now, Sahil, the question is whether this was good enough only for today, or is there an outside chance that we might scale back to 7,900 or around those levels over the course of the next few days?
So I think two parts to this answer. First is that this whole hypothesis of index facing macro headwinds and numbers going haywire began with one simple hypothesis about oil. Brent crude touched about 59.50 or so. But I think there has been a lot of talk around, demand coming back, supplies going down, and oil beginning to enter a bull market. But I think part of the narrative has lost what has happened because of Hurricane Harvey. If you look at the Brent and NYMEX spread, that went to about $6 plus, which is more than 10%. And I think in the last 2 days, it has come down to about $5.50. Where Brent has come down and NYMEX has remained where it is. So I think there is a good chance that you will see Brent coming back about $2-3. And when we were in your studio, we discussed that rupee is more likely to touch 65, 50 or 66, and I think which it has already done. And we are in a second month of significant FI outflow. About, I think cumulative will be around 30,000 crores for August and September. And then if you look at the Nifty index, it fell, I think, about 450 points in the last correction when we hit about 10,137. And this time it has fallen about 490 points. And this fall has been much sharper. And generally when the markets correct for the second time, falls are sharper and the price movement is also more, which I think it is qualifying on both accounts. So if you look at all these parameters put together, if the index is able to hold 9,700, I think even for next 2-3 sessions, there is a good chance that it will go and try to break the 10,000 mark once again. And also it is fair to remember that in bull markets, you will have 1 or 2 months which will be negative, and they are quite rare. If you go back in history, between 2002 to 2007, Nifty had consolidations of only 1 month negative overall. And I think if we close negative this month, which is tomorrow close, it will be sort of a 2-month sideways correction. So which also tells you that market has done some amount of time correction as well. So I think my best guess would be that Nifty more or less will hold 9,700 levels, give or take 50 points, and an attempt towards 10,000 looks likely. Whether it will happen in October series or not, difficult to say, but I think there are fair chances of that happening.
So Sahil, that's interesting. What you mean to say is that downside target on rupee probably achieved, upside target on crude also probably achieved, so we could see some correction, and that is positive for equities. Now, one more index, if you look at, that is the mid-cap index. I was just looking at the movement over last 3-4 months, and mid-cap index, that is Nifty 100 free float, has given 1,500 points kind of a correction twice, and then bounced back to hit a new high. Now this time again, I believe after hitting a new high above 19,000, it has given a similar amount of correction. Do you think the sell-off in mid-cap is also over and it's time to get back, get in once again?
So again, I'll answer the other part also, where you said that there is going to be a fall in oil, which could be positive for equity. We did a report about last month where we said that commodity prices are going to go up significantly, and we've been speaking this about for the last 6 months. And that trend first appeared in industrial metals. I think that is a confirmation that global growth is much stronger, and it is going to be going to rub off on India as well, and which tells us that we are going to enter a very strong period of economic growth. We've done a whole report on it. Happy to chat about it later as well. But from the mid-cap stocks perspective, I think there is a clear differentiation in terms of which mid-caps are running higher. If you take the breakup of mid-cap stocks, the index itself, what we did is we did a study of about 1,600 stocks, and we found that where PAT between FY15 to FY17 has gone up by about 55%, market cap gains on a cumulative basis for these stocks was 50%. And where PAT had degrown by about 60%, the market cap fell by around 20%. So the market is still very, very bipolar, and you are seeing only earnings getting, those stocks performing well where earnings are coming in. So I think that movement will continue, and this correction that you spoke about, this appears again to be transitory, and mid caps might take a while, because I think there has been some amount of leverage positions which have been sold in the last 2-3 days. So mid caps might take a while to come back, at least 2 to 3 weeks. But it does appear that if you go for quality, you could make a good amount of return on mid cap stocks.
Okay. Well, to talk about Nifty again, Nifty will be back to Nifty 50, effectively, so to say. Tomorrow, after the periodic reconfiguration, Darshan Mehta is standing by with all the changes on the Indian equity benchmark. Darshan, what is making the cut?
See, there are 3 stocks that will come in and 4 stocks that will go out. So what is included? Bajaj Finance, HPCL and UPL. These are the 3 counters which will be part of the Nifty. There are 4 stocks goes. So the 4 stocks that go include counters like ACC, there is Bank of Baroda, there is Tata Power, and obviously the DVR of Tata Motors, not Tata Motors. It will be the DVR of Tata Motors which will go out from the Nifty. Now, as far as the likely weights are concerned, the weightage of Bajaj Finance will be 0.99, HPCL will be 0.89 and UPL will be 0.78, and this is as per the IDFC Securities note that came out. Some of the notable changes are the changes obviously get effective from tomorrow. Agri gets a representation in the Nifty for the first time with the entry of UPL this time. You're also seeing that the oil and gas weight will increase to almost 4.9% to 4.1% with the inclusion of HPCL this time around. Financials will remain same because what is going out is Bajaj Finance, what is coming in is Bajaj Finance, what is going out is Bank of Baroda. But this is important. For the first time ever in the Nifty, all 3 oil marketing companies will be there together. There was never a stage that all 3 were there in the Nifty all together. You're seeing that the VSCI weightages will be significant. Contribution of financials will pretty much remain the same as I spoke about because Bank of Baroda goes out and Bajaj Finance come in. This is interesting. The BFSI weight keeps on increasing. So the weight of BFSI is equal to the weightage of oil, technology plus auto. So the BFSI forms a large chunk of the Nifty. As far as the EPS is concerned, FY19 earnings will see a marginal cut of 0.4%. This is as per the Motilal Oswal note. FY18 they believe will pretty much remain the same.
All right, Darshan, thanks very much for getting us all those details. And an interesting data point, all the 3 oil marketing companies will now be included in Nifty. That's your benchmark index of National Stock Exchange. Sahil, just want to get some view on these newcomers which will be Nifty constituents from tomorrow, from the likes of Bajaj Finance, a company which has given good returns to its shareholders in last 1 year. What should one do if somebody is holding that? Do you think it's time to book profits, or one can still hold on or expect higher levels?
So I think particularly for Bajaj Finance, you should still hold on. I think there are significant gains which are to be made in that stock. One of the ways to trade these outperformers is to always look to buy these stocks on dips. So I think there has been some amount of correction in this whole last 7-8 days in Bajaj Finance. I think that will again represent a good entry point. Once these stocks enter the index, I think the movement becomes a little restricted because of funds tracking them very closely. So you might not see similarly sharp moves happening once they enter. So, but probably from a very long-term perspective, I think this stock should be on your radar and in your investment portfolio.
I just have one question, Sahil, before we let you go. And I know you had a fabulous report, which we will probably get to talking about some of the time as well. But you believed, if I'm not wrong, that ICICI Bank could be an interesting stock from the near-term perspective the next couple of days, if I'm not wrong.
That's right. I think it's purely based on how expiry has panned out. If you look at the top 10, 20 stocks with strongest rollovers, there are hardly any large caps in those names. So I think there has not been significant rollover activity in a number of stocks. ICICI, has seen a significant amount of correction from about 295 levels to 265 this morning. So I think there is going to be a bounce back where positions can be rebuilt into ICICI Bank, and it could go and touch about 285 to 290 levels.
Okay, Sahil, we'll leave it at that. Thanks so much for joining us and giving us that perspective.
Thanks.
That's the view from Sahil Kapoor of Edelweiss. He called it right, as I said. If actually both Sahil and Ashish called it very correct, if viewers would have tuned into 2:30 and would have paid heed to their advice, there was some quick money to be made today.
Sure, especially in the last half an hour of trade.
What we didn't do, Navneet, today, and I'm very disappointed with that, is that we didn't talk about, or we didn't ask you about which other stocks that could go in or out of the FNO ban.
Niraj, tomorrow is the first day of the new series. Majority of the stocks are going to be out.
But we are still
We've
seeing
seen
these
one
days,
or two
right?
stocks from the likes of India Bulls Real Estate, JSW Energy, I guess, start of September series on day one. It was in the ban, but I'll be back from tomorrow, don't worry.
Yeah. Maybe it's a miss on our end, me and Pradeep didn't ask the lady about what she knows best, amongst other things. But nevertheless, what we did know and what we did do very well is ask certain managements, guys, about what are their plans in the near term to the medium term. One of such management was Lupin, and it was interesting because Lupin believed that while this year was likely to be the worst for Lupin's US business, things may change from the next year. In a conversation with us earlier today, the CFO, Ramesh Swaminathan, said that normalcy will return to the market by 2021. Let's listen in to a slice of that conversation.
US has been, in fact, a lackluster performance this year, more because of the fact that we had a pretty large base. As you'd be aware, both Fortimet and Glumetza came under pressure, more Glumetza, and that's the reason why, in fact, the Q1 results were impacted. And we had actually anticipated this and gone public with it quite some time ago. And of course, we do believe that this is perhaps the worst year. Next year onwards, things could be better. Because we've got a pretty rich pipeline. Next year, for example, we do have a lot of good products to bring into market. But I would think that the normalcy would actually return in 2021.
In 2021.
Yeah.
So are we going to continue to see a drop in your US revenue over the next 2 quarters?
No, I think this is going to be the worst
Are we
year.
stabilizing from here, or from this second quarter onwards, or will we continue to see cuts in your US business for the next few quarters as well?
No, what I'm saying is this year could be the worst, and after that I think you would see growth next year, but it's certainly not coming back to normalcy. It'll be a couple of years before we get to those levels.
So you're preparing us in the sense for the next few quarters, aren't you?
That's only for the US, but we've got a lot of other growth engines also. It is about 45% of our business, and you would recognize that you've got a pretty rich pipeline coming in for that. And of course, if we talk about the medium term, you've got a very rich pipeline with the respiratory portfolio, complex injectables, and a host of other things, and of course, derma products and the like, and biosimilars also.
Well, that was Lupin. And moving to ICICI Bank now, the bank has introduced 3 new home loan offers today. Borrowers can now avail a 1% cashback on monthly EMIs, get a 20% refund for the credit or debit card transactions while applying for the loan, and a step up on existing loans. Vishwanath Nair caught up with the lender's executive director Anup Bagchi and started off by asking him about the timing of the scheme and whether a sudden rise in loan repayment has triggered the new offers.
I think this is festival time, and festival time we have seen that many of the financials and purchase decisions happen during festival time. And if anybody can help support that financial decisioning by way of a little bit of incentives, then the person on the edge does take that benefit. And if you really look at this point of time, with PMAY less than 30 lakhs, you have got great subvention coming from government. You take our 1% cashback EMI schemes, which gives you for a 30-year loan, it gives you 10% of principal back to your pocket. If you take the other 2 schemes, which is 20% cashback up to 10,000 rupees, and if you take the 20% step up, I think it's a fantastic time to really make that decision. And with RERA coming in, where now the confidence is coming back on the Finnish projects, and everybody is running scheme there as well. So I think it's a very good time for home ownership to come in India. Okay. So it's a good time for the market as such, and from our side, any help and support that we can give for customers to buy their dream house, because home ownership is a critical area in overall household finance. So it's important that if we can lend that support, we should, and that is what we have done. And festival times are generally very good times to lend, because families get together, and these are all the largest, biggest financial decision of their lives. So it's actually a family decision and in a good mood. So it's always good to launch schemes during festival season.
Just so that the people watching this will understand, you're talking about A plus B plus C, which is firstly give cash back
1% EMI.
Yes.
Secondly, 20% cashback on credit card and debit card spends, but that is up to 10,000 rupees. So that is essentially incidentally all processing fees, etc., and all incidental expenses get. 1% is a big one because 10% of principal comes back. 1% on EMI, which is principal plus interest. And third is step-up loans. So there are many people who want to buy a slightly larger house, but today's salary doesn't, really give them that eligibility. But if we think that the income levels are going to increase for those set of customers, then we are giving 20% higher eligibility. So that's also an important thing. Then we have a step-up EMI loans. So your EMIs will also increase a little bit later. So essentially these are, if you see, they are for different customer segments, but there could be a customer segment which will take all the three. I mean, there is no harm. I think it is good for customers. And it's very critical that home ownership decision is taken and supported by loans at a very attractive rate with subvention.
Let's also take a look at what kept the dealing rooms and the street abuzz today. Agam Vakil is standing by with his channel checks. Agam, what's been on the minds of the dealers today?
Well, when it comes to the dealers and what they're saying right now, considering the fact that we've seen the Nifty move up to a certain extent, closing in the green, the dealers are suggesting that, we could see a little bit of a bounce back from these current levels. However, there is a lot of caution, which is why they are expecting to remain with the relatively larger name stocks. And speaking of larger name stocks, the first one is of course Bajaj Finance. Bajaj Finance will move into the Nifty as it has been discussed, and we have a lot of HNI names buying into the stock. The second one is of course Ultratech Cements, and this is where we have a lot of foreign institutional buyers moving into this counter, the stock ending by as much nearly 2% in the green. And finally, of course, HDFC Bank. The relatively heavier weights, we have seen two large foreign brokerages also pushing this counter, and of course we've also had brokerage notes on this, and because of which we are looking at a 1% gain there. So some of these counters are where the dealers are looking at a lot of activity, and we'll be watching out for more developments in the same.
All right, Agam, thanks a lot for getting us all those details. Those are the counters which dealing rooms are keeping an eye for in terms of tomorrow's trading session as well. But now to tell what we should look out for in tomorrow's trading session, Saloni Dhanuka joins us with the key things to be watched out tomorrow. Hi, Saloni.
Hi, Navneet. So before talking about the key events lined up for tomorrow, today later in the evening, US is to release second quarter GDP numbers as well as data on jobless claims. So it will be closely monitored following last week's hawkish outlook from the central bank. For tomorrow, we'll be looking out for key developments from the annual general meeting of DLF, Glenmark Pharma, India Bulls Real Estate, as well as Eris Life Sciences. Some stock reaction could be seen there. And it will be a data-heavy day on the economic front tomorrow with, firstly, Japan and Eurozone is to release monthly consumer price inflation figures. Japan will also release data on industrial production. Secondly, China is to publish manufacturing PMI data. Now, it is a leading indicator of the economic activity. A reading above 50 indicates expansion, while a reading below 50 indicates contraction. So it will remain a key watch for yuan, which has some impact on the Indian currency as well. Also, UK is to publish a final estimates of second quarter GDP tomorrow. And finally, back home, we'll be keeping an eye on weekly foreign exchange reserves data. Remember, it touched a record high and crossed the 400 billion mark last week. And it will remain a key watch considering the current volatility in the Indian rupee. Navneet.
Thanks, Saloni, for that. And let's go across to Jayesh now before we wrap up to get the latest check on commodity market. Jayesh.
Pradeep, let me start off with the commodity of the day. That has to be rubber on the Shanghai Futures Exchange. At one point in time, it was down as much as 7%. However, ended the day only with a loss of about 4%. As far as gold prices are concerned, we are seeing some bit of recovery after gold actually fell for 3 continuous days. Now, this is on the back of the dollar index having some sort of recovery on the back of Trump's tax reform plan. And the other precious metal that we normally do not refer to, palladium prices have actually topped platinum prices for the first time since 2001. As far as base metals are concerned, very muted cues coming in on the Shanghai Futures Exchange. All the base metals ended with a negative bias. But oil markets is where the actual action is. So WTI at the moment is trading with a gain of about 1.5%, backed by US stockpiles which have come in at a surprise. So crude inventories have declined by 1.85 million barrels for the last week. On the back of this, we are seeing WTI trade near the 53 mark and Brent trading above the 58 mark.
Okay, thanks a lot for that, Jayesh. But with that, it's a wrap on this edition of What Did You Miss? From Pradeep, Navneet and me, Niraj. Thanks so much for watching this leg. Stay tuned to BloombergQuint for all news and updates.